Hello, I am Scott Herbst. I am founder of Six Flex Training and Consulting, and you are watching or listening to The Flex. This is a show where we have conversations with people who are expressing leadership with the intention that it open access to you expressing yours. Really excited here to have on the show today Dr. Baker Wright. And Baker is the owner and team leader of Behavior Management Consultants, and they provide behavior analysis and consulting services for individuals of all ages and exceptionalities, with the purpose that people lead happier and more independent lives. They are all over, from South Georgia down to the very tip of Florida, and now actually having expanded into Charlottesville, Virginia. So they are growing. As usual, I'm going to keep my introduction brief so you can really hear Baker's story from Baker. Baker, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for being here. As I always start my show in the same place, and it's with the question or statement, prompt, whatever you call it. You know, I'd love to hear your leadership story and what brought you into, founding BMC and growing BMC, starting wherever you see is important to start from.
No, I appreciate that. I came into BMC. I'm second generation owner of BMC. BMC was founded in
That's
1980
right.
by Dr. Maxon Reese and Dr. John Bailey, and I came into BMC into behavior analysis ultimately by pure luck. Pure luck. And I started as a graduate student, and I've always been interested when looking back at the leadership aspect of different things, whether it be teams, athletically or growing up. But I never really put my thumb on the interest of being in leadership per se. I graduated, finished my graduate career at FSU, decided to stay with BMC because I just felt so at home, not only with what we do, but also the style of leadership that I came under with Dr. Reese and Dr. Bailey as my PhD advisor. And then as I grew as a consultant, as a behavior
And
analyst,
I'm just curious,
yeah.
what would you say was that style of leadership that you saw and wanted to emulate?
What I wanted to emulate from Max in particular was the individual care that she gave to everybody on the team. She
Hmm.
had a very different style than I did,
Yeah.
or that I do, but she created a culture where it was very tight knit, and we cared for each other, and that was what was at the time and what remains to be the most important thing for us, is keeping things tight knit and being very careful about maintaining and growing our culture, and that makes all the other stuff that's difficult much more easy for that. And so I was very lucky to be raised by her in the business world, or at least the business side of things. And so I came into leadership in 2015 and waded through uh, what my version of leadership was, and as a result of that, really started to dig into how can I be better for our team. And from that, I really started to gain a taste for leadership and servant leadership, and how can we do this on the team that we have. And that really has become my focus. I do very little clinical work now, or consulting work. My focus is on being a better leader for our team and growing better leaders for our team as the company grows.
Awesome. I am really curious. I heard a little something there about so having, come up in a company that you now uh, guide, right? Um, you said that when you took over, there was just like some degree of finding yourself in
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
leadership role. And
Right.
and I'm curious about a couple things. One, just what you meant by that and what that process was like, but also, and with an eye towards how our listeners might really learn something from this, um, what it was like to uh, take leadership from someone else, because I know that's really where a lot of people's leadership journey starts. They're
Right.
doing the work, and someone sees something in them, elevates them into their for okay, you know you've done good. You've shown you've got something. We want more people to have what you have. We're going to give
Right.
you a team, and they're probably taking that team over from someone else,
Right.
and
Right.
um and so that's a challenge, I know, for a lot of people. Could you speak to, I guess, both of those things?
For sure, because it was scary. Here was this person who we put up on this very high pedestal, and still do. And I had to take over from that. I mean, there are people who I had to really figure out, are people dedicated to her? Are they dedicated to this company? What's their trust of me kind of trying to fill her shoes, understanding that she was a very different person than I am, like personality wise. So she could get away with some things that probably I couldn't, and I can do some
Mm-hmm.
things differently than she would. Um, and so that was one of the difficult parts, and continually getting more and more comfortable with failing at that. And because coming in, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to show that I deserve to be in this role. And there's this odd feeling that I had of like, how can I match who I am with what she did, because she was so good at what she did, and she has this tribe of people who's so dedicated to her. But I kept hearing her voice. Unfortunately, she passed away from cancer not long after I took over leadership of the company. I just still hear her voice saying, I don't, I want you to be you. When I was in graduate school, there was a big cultural thing where, people wore bracelets and wore t-shirts that said WWJD, what would Jesus do? And
Yeah.
we kind of joked in our group, is like, WWMD, what would Max do? And that was the original thought of like, what would she do? But I know what she would have done is say, you need to figure out what you're going to do, and what you're going to do, and how you're going to be as a leader. And so that was something that was reassuring and scary at the same time, as I tried to gain the trust of the team. Um, and it takes time. And that's something that I think I learned. I think that's something that new leaders coming into new positions need to learn, is it just takes time. There's not really anything that you can say that is going to really create a foundation, for people to trust. It's who you are over time. And there's a lot of stuff going on now with, how popular Brene Brown has become with vulnerability. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I think that it's being open, listening, and being okay with failing.
Yeah, well, you talk for people who haven't uh really followed Brene Brown, talk a little bit more about what you mean by that, by being vulnerable, or for people who have. I mean, it's always great to, it's one thing to say be vulnerable. I know
Yeah.
sharing
Yeah.
examples makes a difference, right?
Yeah, and I think, my perspective on it is, some people take it the wrong way, and they think, oh, be vulnerable. Okay, well, share all of your dirty secrets. It's like, that's not what that's about. It's
Mm.
the way that we talk about that, and the way that we operate on our team is being open, and being honest, and that not only requires some self-reflection of, what story am I telling myself about this whole thing? In this whole event, is this person really upset? Is this person really need something else, or is that something that I'm telling myself and sort of self-reflecting on what we're doing as leaders? And so I think for me and for us, the idea of vulnerability is openness and thoughtfulness, and not being so afraid to hide things and create this sort of mask um, of a faultless leader. And being open to listening to your team, and really being a servant leader truly, I think is sort of how we wrap ourselves around that.
Can I see if I'm getting this by way of an example? Because what I made up as you were sharing that was that let's say you and I are working together on something.
Hmm.
I might leave a meeting thinking, "Oh man, I was kind of a jerk," or uh, the Baker's a little irritated with me, or
Right,
I don't think Baker's on board here, right? Whatever. And so
right.
being vulnerable in this case could be just checking in with you
That's right.
and saying, "Hey, Baker, I left that meeting and I had a thought that maybe you're not on board with this idea.
That's right.
And I don't want to trust that. I actually want to hear from you. Are you on board? And if not, like, let's talk about it."
Right. It's a great example of that because, in the span of time between those two events is so critical, and that's why it's so one of the reasons why it's so important to have a good trusting culture within the environment where you lead and the team that you lead, because the quicker somebody can come back around and say, hey, hey Scott, I left that meeting and I went and had lunch and I got to come back. Like, the story I'm telling myself about that is that you're frustrated with me and that maybe I didn't do my work. And I know that that may be wrong. Like, so I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. But if you were to come to me, I may very well say, oh my gosh, Scott, I'm so sorry about that. I, I had trouble sleeping last night and I had to take NyQuil, and like, I'm just not what, so anything you might have gotten from my face is probably not that. I love what you're doing. And that frees you up to go be great that day instead of harboring all of those things. And then you sort of create this Disney villain out of the leader, or out of me or out of somebody else. And so that's something that we try to encourage as much as possible, is that open communication. And even using those words specifically has been helpful for us. Like, gosh, story I'm telling myself about that is, or what I heard is, um, and the leadership, um, we have to be open to hearing that. And that can be hard too. That can be hard too. But it's something we strive for. I don't know that there's ever perfection on that, but something that we strive for.
I love what you're saying. And I want to underline the point you made about people mistaking uh you didn't say this, I'm saying this. People mistaking dumping for vulnerability,
Correct.
because I've heard people say that
Yes.
where like they unload a complaint on someone
Yes.
and it doesn't go the way they wanted to, and then they'll come back and say, "Well, I don't know what the problem was. I was vulnerable, I was open with my feelings, and this person
Yes.
really let me have it." And what I'm hearing and what I appreciate in what you're saying is that the vulnerability actually isn't with me sharing every thought I have. It's me being willing to share how the world looks to me. And then the vulnerable piece is being willing to receive what it gets back.
I think that's beautifully stated, and that's the way that we see it. It's funny. There's uh, I grew up in the South, and so we have a lot of ways that we dismiss saying potentially ugly things. So if you ever
From
hear
the
somebody say,
Midwest,
"Well,
I could probably
bl
relate to this. Yeah.
yeah," so it's like bless your heart. It's like, oh, you're about to
Yeah.
say something rude about somebody.
We call
And
it we call it being nicety.
yeah, right. I think that's it. I think that there's such great There's so many great things that come out of this conversation of vulnerability and all the things that Brené's doing and the people around her as well. Unfortunately, I think it's kind of taken this tact where it's become for some, a bless your heart. It's like, well, I'm going to be vulnerable here, and then they unload a bunch of stuff. It's like that's not really how we see it as being really effective on our team. I think in how you described it more eloquently than I did. I think it's that second part that's important for our leadership team is being open to that, and being open to the person coming and saying, "Hey, this is what I'm getting from you," or "This is what I'm getting from that person," and really keeping an open mind and a curious mind about that. Something else that we sort of attach to this on our team is, be a better question asker, and that's something that's so important for us and incredibly important for our leadership team, is be the best question asker. And, to steal a Ted Lasso quote is, be curious and really ask questions out of curiosity, and be open to the answer. And
Yeah,
so
let's
those two
talk
things are
about a
linked
little
for
bit
us.
more about that. Um, in because I don't quite know what you mean yet by be a better question asker.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm wondering if we could parse that out because I'm clear there's something really there. And
No,
yeah.
it's been a big part of what we talk about. Certainly, our senior team, our BCBAs, and our leadership team, and it is the resistance against thinking that we know everything.
Mm,
And if we can engage with others and ask great questions, then we can do a variety of things. We show that we are interested. We show that we don't know all the answers. Um, in some cases, by asking better questions, we can get other people to come up with their own great answers.
mm,
Some of our best consultants, Scott, some of our best consultants are masters at asking the right question and getting people from a paraprofessional to a parent to a teacher to a school administrator to a residential facility administrator. They ask the right questions and they get that person to go, you know what? I've never thought about that. I think so. And you know what that makes me think about? I wonder if it's and that is incredible value for us. And that's what we try, especially when we're teaching our new BCBAs to go out there, because new BCBAs have an understandable desire to have all the answers. They have these new letters behind their name, and that means that they have to have all the answers. And what we
yeah.
really push is you don't. You need to have more questions, and it's freeing for that. And if we can add value to other people by asking them better questions, then we've done our job. And that's on our team. That's with other people. And so we have stickers. We should have one somewhere, but you know, we have this constant reminder of are you asking the right questions? Are you being thoughtful? And when you think you know something, ask one more question and see if it illuminates something for you.
Mm.
So that's a big thing for us, and I think it helps us be better consultants ultimately, and I think it helps us to be better behavior analysts.
I wanna catch something. I love what you just said about when you think you have an answer, ask one more question. And and I'll bet that a useful practice would be to if just really ask yourself, okay, what's one more question I could ask?
Right.
Just to
Yeah.
get, at any point, right?
And part of this is about being a better listener too. If I'm listening to you, and instead of trying to think of the answer to the next thing that I want to say, if I'm thinking about, I wonder what else, if I'm thinking about that, then I'm really truly engaging with you. So it's about asking questions about learning more, but it's also about engaging in a behavior that like helps me attend to what you're saying better. Um, and that's just it's it- when we think we know all the answers and we ask a second question or a third question or a fifth question, sometimes we realize that we did know the answer, and that's an important lesson too. And especially as our team grows and we have more people on the team and more leadership positions, that is a critical element for our leaders. This isn't just about the teachers and the paras and the parents and the administrators. This is about an RBT. This is about a new BCBA. This is about a very seasoned BCBA listening to a very new BCBA and you know, getting value out of them. And that's why we have the conversation about the leadership aspect of that. Because if you're open to learning from people, regardless of where you think you are positionally, then ultimately you're going to be a better leader, and it comes as a result of that. And it's not about a title, and it's not about, well, I've been a BCBA for X number of years and I know more than you do. It's like, gosh, if I can ask better questions of people, then maybe I can continually learn from them. And then in that process, they learn from me, and they also learn that I'm open and listen. And it it's been a fun journey for us to have these sort of little snippets that we really think about and talk about regularly, and that's one of them. Be a better question asker.
What makes a good question?
I think thoughtfulness and really good question askers. Uh, I had to sit in on a jury duty for the first time in my life last week. So I
Really?
really I went into this. I went into the courtroom, and I wrote my emails. I write our team a Monday email every Monday, and I there's some leadership stuff in there, and so I've been sort of keeping them abreast of what's been going on in this jury. Um, the state attorney was an awesome question asker. She was thoughtful. She asked questions for clarity. Uh, she was kind. There were a couple witnesses that were in very difficult, sort of emotional places. And she started her question with, I know that this must be difficult for you. So I'm just going to ask you a couple questions about this, which I thought it was a great lesson of, just clarity and kindness and
Yeah.
thoughtfulness. And she gave me the impression of she's really curious about the answer. She's not asking this as some tool. She's very, so I would say thoughtfulness and curiosity. Now, on the other side, the defense attorney, he put he would make a statement and then he would say, right, you saw this person do this thing, right? You were at this place at this time, right? I was like, that's not question asking. Um, so it's a great, your question was a great question because it something that is requires some thought, and so being thoughtful in something that requires and asks for some thoughtfulness on the receiver, I think is a good sign that you're heading the right direction.
Awesome. The things I want to underline, and you didn't say this, but I heard this. I heard that part of it, maybe it's not every time. I appreciate you saying that's a good question because I don't think I was doing this, but one thing you pointed to in her behavior was there was like a certain amount of empathy
Yeah,
and taking the perspective of the person who you're asking the question of.
right.
Um, without though, at the same time, really knowing or bringing certainty to that perspective. and forgive me, I'm trying to sort this out for myself here. But
Yeah,
I could hear the empathy, like, hey, this could actually be tough for you. And
yeah,
and I want to honor where you are.
right.
And at the
That's
same
right.
time, I don't really know where you are.
Right.
So I'm going to bring that curiosity and ask a question that gives me, and you did say, ask questions that generate clarity.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask a question that helps me be clear on what it's like for you or
Yeah.
what your
Yeah.
perspective is or your thinking, whatever it is, right?
Right. Right. And I think about that when we have team members who are going through difficult times. We're at a place now, we've got 68 team members across the company. And at any point in time with a team that big, people are dealing with life things.
Yeah.
And, and so our leaders need to be able to approach those people in a way that is careful in terms of like full of care, thoughtfulness, and real curiosity about how can we best help you and not make assumptions of those things and um, do that in a kind way. How can we help you? Which is kind of an interesting thing too, Scott, is even that kind of a question is difficult because you have a leader saying, "How can I help you?" with some people who may not want to come across as needing anything or helping, and so sometimes it's even presumptuous to say, "How can I help you?" Um, So and again, that kind of gets back to understanding our team members, having good support across the team so that we can best support each other and be helpful and have good open conversations. Not all not all of our conversations are fun. And so there are times where you have to say, you know what, this is I know that this conversation is difficult. It's difficult for me, and I know it's probably very difficult for you in a very different way. Um, and that's another piece of the vulnerability or the honesty part that I
Yeah.
think is and something I learned a few years ago, which I think has been incredibly helpful for me, is when going into those conversations like that is making that statement and say, I know that this must be difficult for you, and it's difficult for me to share this with you. And so if I stumble over my words, I just may need some time because it is difficult. And this is not a fun topic. But we're gonna figure some things out and see how we can both be successful. And that's something that I've learned, and I think that is becoming easier, is being open to say those sorts of things.
Mm.
Um, and especially as you grow in leadership, I think unfortunately the expectation for some is that everybody's going to listen to you because you're in the corner office or because you have letters behind your name or because you own the company. It's like they may hear you because of that, but they're not listening to you because of that. They're listening to you because they trust you and you've built that over time and that you're honest with them, um, uh, uh, you know, throughout your relationships with them. And so that goes all the way back. We got a whole nother conversation about hiring practice and how that really facilitates this type of um, trust, this type of culture that is so important to our team.
Um, I so the two themes that have, I would say, come out of this so far are being vulnerable and not, again, not dumping, but being
Right.
open to what
Right.
people have to say, like really willing to hear whatever's there for people. And then communicating in a way that opens up, like lets people be open.
Right.
And the I'm really curious if you have any insights about how to develop those skills in others well, how to develop those skills in yourself and then how to develop those skills in others, because I think they are skills. And
I
yeah,
definitely believe that. Yeah, I definitely believe that. It is I think it's more work than people would think. And it's just like anything else. When you do it well, it seems easy. Um, but gosh, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of thoughtfulness and preparation. Um, I know when I'm going into difficult or crucial conversations, which is another wonderful book about this sort of stuff. I'm doing a lot of practice, and I'm writing out. I've always learned all the way back from elementary school. If I write it out, I learn it better. And so I'm writing out my conversation. I'm writing out my questions, and I'm thinking about what could be a good follow up for that, and how can I get. And it's not easy at all times. It just takes work and preparation to be thoughtful about any conversation. And we talk about that with our team about make sure you take the last 10 minutes before you go into something to prepare for that something. Because if you're rushing into a conversation, a meeting, or job, and you're clicking your phone off as you go into the door, you're not there yet. Having good interactions and being a good question asker requires some thoughtfulness and some preparation. And the bigger the conversation is, I think the more preparation it takes. And uh, I think being prepared and never losing sight of the value of that preparation. That's something that for me is important.
I think that's
Is
brilliant. I think a lot of people think that leadership is this thing that, oh, you've got it, or,
uh
like a character trait, right?
yeah.
And I so appreciate that you're saying just the act of taking 10 minutes to get grounded, get present, look at what you really want to accomplish, um, what conversation is gonna move towards that accomplishment. Uh,
Right.
really, it's like leadership really happens out here, and part of that is preparing, like giving yourself time to practice out here.
Well, that's right. And that's, one of the things that I appreciate about what you're doing is you're having a conversation about this, and you're asking questions of people in different positions, to really try to figure out what are these leaders doing? What tools are they using to do this better? And we can learn from each other. I mean, good gracious, um, you know, there's reams of research and books. My bookshelf is filled with all of this stuff, and it's how do you take action on those things, and how do you learn, and how do you self-monitor that too? It's like, man, I could have done that better. I should not have asked that question then, or maybe I should have asked this question differently, or maybe I should have, you know, done that. I wasn't prepared for that part. And that again, I think that kind of flows back into the growth mindset and the vulnerability part of like do some do some analysis of how you did, and be open to going back to, if it was a conversation, going back to a person and say, look, I I kind of got my words jumbled yesterday. I just want to clarify a couple things, and growing as a leader and being open to stumbling, and being okay with that. I heard something the other day that this guy, he asked tons, I don't remember, thousands or more, leaders to talk about their best moment. Um, and I think he said some high percentage, may not have been 100, but it was 90+% of those leaders. They started the story of their best moment with a failure. So, man, I did this, I messed up, but then, I was able to grow from there. And I think that that's because they were curious about changing that, and they were sensitive to changing that and to being better leader for their teams.
That's
So
so interesting.
it's work. Yeah. Yeah, it's it's work and being open to making to making those steps. And we have our we have a senior leadership or a senior BCBA. It's all of our full-time BCBAs. We go on a 2.5 day retreat annually, and we talk about this sort of stuff because we're trying to build new leaders on our team. And one of the slides that I have that I'm going to talk about, it's just this picture of a basketball court, and there's players on the court, and then there's players on the bench. And the question that I'm going to ask is, where does success happen in this picture? And I think the obvious answer is, well, success happens on the court. And so, well, where does failure happen? Oh, I mean, failure happens on the court too. And so,
Love that.
but neither of those things happen on the bench. You can prepare certainly on the bench, but I heard John Maxwell listen to something he did the other day, and he said some people think that success and failure are on far ends of the spectrum. He said, in fact, success and failure are right tied right there together. And I need to hear that for for leadership, and just to be aware that those two things are right there together, and all these things are intertwined, I think, because it takes curiosity, it takes vulnerability, it takes being a good question asker of others, but also yourself, to grow. And that's the journey. That's the journey.
That's awesome. We are getting close to the end of our time. Um, Questions I love to ask. Is there anything you want to share that you haven't gotten to?
I don't think so. I think I love having these conversations, and I think that, well, I mean, one thing, if I'm in our field, in the field of behavior analysis, we've grown so fast as a field in such a short period of time that I'm hopeful that we can create a culture of leadership in our field that promotes the things that you and I are talking about. Um, I worry a little bit about where our field is because of the massive growth. Um, and I just think to do what we do, and really in any human services type of a capacity, um, I think it really calls for great ethical leaders. And I just hope that as we grow our population of behavior analysts, certified level, the ones who've just now, passed the test, that they see leadership as part of their growth and not just the clinical aspect of what they do. And we're going to we're going to hold true to that on our team. And I'm just hopeful. I'm hopeful for the people in our field that is something that they don't lose sight of. There's a lot of people telling behavior analysts how great they are and how valuable they are, but and that's great. But we need good leaders out there. So that's that's my soapbox issue at the moment.
Awesome. Another question I ask of all my guests is, what are you proud of?
I am I am well, I am proud of our team members who get to experience the joy of the work that they've done, and especially as they're teaching other people how to do it. There's a level of joy that people on our team experience when they get to use what they know and pass that through other people, that we really hope that people can get as much of that joy to keep them engaged and energized. I'm proud that I was lucky enough, blessed enough to be in the right place at the right time. I'm very proud of this team. I'm proud of the culture that we have. I'm proud of what this orange cube stands for. Um, yeah, so I'm trying to preserve that as best as I can.
Wonderful. And my final question is, if people would like to, how can they reach you or reach BMC?
Of course. No, I appreciate that. Our website is BMC Southeast, spell out the Southeast, .com. And you should be able to find anything and everything there, including how to get in touch with me. So bmcsoutheast.com. You can also see a link into there on our new learning site, which is for parents and professionals. And that's bmclearning.com. It's our new venture. I say new. It's not that new because we've taught people and trained people for decades now, but we're now doing that on the internet. And so BMC Learning is a great place where we're growing and trying to help people be better practitioners and do what they do so that we can expand what the effect that we have on individuals and both in the leadership capacity, but also in the clinical capacity.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Right. Thank you so much for taking the time to share, what you're about and your insights with myself and our listeners. I really appreciate it. And
pleasure is all mine. I appreciate it very much.
And for those of you watching, listening, this wraps up this episode of The Flex. As always, please, hit the buttons wherever they are. Give us a thumbs up, a 5-star review, leave a comment, and we will see you here the next episode of The Flex.